Welcome back to another All-22 film review. I'm your host, Jackson Powers. The Kansas City Chiefs officially beat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35 in Super Bowl 57 thanks to the game-ending 27-yarder by kicker Harrison Butker, which means we're officially in the offseason, and that means it's time to review some draft content. Today we've got some draft crushes of mine, and by that I do not mean the guys that are projected to go in the top 5. I obviously love the Jalen Carters and the Will Andersons of this class, which, by the way, if you haven't checked it out, go look at my video on those two. That one did pretty well. That should familiarize you with them. But by draft crushes, I'm talking more about the guys who are projected to be maybe towards the later end of the first round. I've seen some mocks to the second round for these guys. And I personally would take all three of these guys with a top 10 pick. We are talking about the Florida quarterback, Anthony Richardson, the Ohio State receiver, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and the Georgia defensive end, Nolan Smith. We're starting off with Richardson, so without further ado, let's get right into it.
Starting off with Anthony Richardson, the very first thing that you're going to notice about him is that he jumps off the page athletically in every single way imaginable. Arm strength, he's got it. Mobility, he's got it. His ability to break sacks is absolutely crazy. He can throw on the run really well. Every single tool you would like a quarterback to have, Richardson has got it. Richardson is also going to be someone that is going to make a lot of highlight reel chunk plays for your team, like this one right here. Takes the snap, stands confidently in the pocket, and he's going to air it out deep on the left side to this go route. And really, this is good coverage right here. The cornerback is right on his hip, but Richardson is going to drop it just past the cornerback's reach and right into the breadbasket of his receiver. Now, I could sit here and just ramble on all day about how much of a freak athlete that Richardson is, and if you want to see that, all you really need to do is search Anthony Richardson highlights, but I want to talk about how pro-ready he is as a passer because there's definitely some issues. On this play, you're going to see him take the snap in shotgun, 3-step drop back, and this pocket collapses pretty immediately. Right there are 5 guys in his face. 9 times out of 10, that's a sack. Not for Richardson. This dude is so hard to bring down, but my issue lies with the throw because he's going to air this thing out deep. And usually when you're throwing, especially when you're throwing it deep, you want to kind of plant that front foot and then kind of torque your oblique and your hips over that so you get that power from your back and your leg. Richardson does this weird thing where he kind of kicks off of his base, right? You're going to see that front foot kick out to the left, and then that also makes him fling the back foot. So he doesn't really have much of a platform here. He's kind of throwing this like a shortstop, but it still travels 65 yards down the field. Just imagine how far that ball could go if he had good lower body mechanics. But my biggest issue here is that this affects his accuracy. You see Richardson miss a lot of throws, especially overthrow them. This is kind of the source of that problem. My other big issue with Richardson is that he takes too long looking at the pocket before he actually moves into his reads. This is a good example of that, where Richardson's going to take the snap, play action, pretty clean pocket, and immediately there's a receiver wide open over the middle on a drag route, and the only thing really in the way is this ref, but even then, you could release the ball right here, throw it with anticipation, and it would be way to the right of the ref, and he wouldn't really get in the play at all. But Richardson waits because he's just looking at this pocket. Then when he finally finds his guy, he doesn't release it until right here, where there's a defender converging on this ball, and that makes it way easier for the defender to either knock the ball out or hit the receiver before he can turn upfield and make a play with his legs. But there's not really a great excuse why the ball is not thrown here as opposed to right here, because he's just making it harder on his receiver. So those are my big issues with Richardson, and I think they're pretty fixable. But the reason he's one of my draft crushes is that there are so many people, both on social media and hired analysts, that are saying things like, Richardson is cool, he's toolsy, but we remember what happened to Zach Wilson. And you can't just draft a quarterback based on tools. And I think that is the worst comparison. And the biggest difference between the two is Zach Wilson will do stuff like this, where pressure comes in his face and he just does this little backward skip and panics. Richardson does not have that. Richardson handles pressure a lot better than Wilson ever did in college. To any team that drafts Anthony Richardson, they're not getting this wet blanket that completely folds under pressure like Zach Wilson did, because Richardson can actually move in the pocket once there's pressure in his face, right? Takes the snap, play action. This defensive tackle has absolutely flown through this interior offensive line, and a guy like Zach Wilson is pirouetting all around the field once he sees this, not Richardson. Richardson's just going to slide to the right side, not big movement. He's not looking to take off. He's not looking to throw it away because the play's not over. He just kind of moves along the pocket and rifles the ball over the middle to his settled receiver for a nice pickup. Another major misconception going around with Richardson right now is that he is just nowhere near an NFL caliber pocket passer. He's super raw. And while he's not someone that I would be starting right out of the gate as a rookie, I think he needs a little bit of time to sit on the bench and develop. He's not this Malik Willis caliber prospect where he's got a lot of tools, but is just completely unfixable as a pocket passer. I think that's just not true. This is a good example of why I believe that. Utah's showing a too high shell right here. The cornerbacks are in off coverage. And if you look at the box, the guys on the inside are not really well matched with these two interior receivers and this running back. That's a pretty good indicator that Utah is showing cover 2 right now. But this is no normal cover 2. There's a lot of movement in the secondary pre-snap. You see this cornerback start to drift back a little bit. This safety's coming forward. Richardson sees this and he calls an audible for his teammates because this is a disguised coverage. And by the time he takes the snap, he is right. But this is kind of a weird disguised coverage because they're showing a cover 2 and they're moving pieces around to go into a different cover 2, right? Or if you look at these two cornerbacks, once Richardson takes the snap, they're running directly backwards. They're the two new safeties that are covering everything over the top. And then the safeties cover 2. Once Richardson takes the snap, they're coming forward to defend the seams. That is a lot to process as a redshirt sophomore quarterback. That is a lot to be thrown at mentally, and Richardson handles it really, really well, where he calls the audible and stretches everything down the field because he knows that if those two safeties are going to be coming forward and the cornerback's going to be running back, a lot of this is going to depend on the depth of this middle linebacker because if he can get back, this first level of the field is going to be wide open. But if he can't, he's going to have a really nice strike over this part. Now, if you look at this receiver right here, he is running an in-breaking route because he beats the safety and kind of twists his momentum against him. Richardson hits him, but watch where Richardson is throwing this ball. This is crazy anticipation. He's starting his windup right here. And at that point, the receiver has not even really become open. That is a really smart and a really tough play for someone that's been deemed as an unfixable pocket passer. People also have this huge misconception with him that he just cannot go through his reads at a very high level, and I don't think that's true at all. On this play, he's going to take the snap. He's in shotgun. Once he gets the ball, his first read is number 9 right here, coming across on a drag route. But because he has this late rush coming from this linebacker, it's kind of covered, and he doesn't really have the opportunity to hit that without staring the route down. So he's going to turn his head over to number 4, who's running an in-breaking route. But by the time he actually gets it off, this safety is going to be coming towards him, and that's going to be a super tight window throw. So he's going to pump fake it at number 4, and it's going to bring this linebacker off of his spot a little bit, and that opens up a passing lane for this receiver right here. I'm going to go back and show this in real time so you can see how fast he made all of these decisions. He takes the snap, looks at number 9, not there, turns his head, pump fake, and then he throws it. That is a really quick mental processor for someone who is quote-unquote unfixable. But my biggest reason why I'm willing to consider him a draft crush is that even if he takes 0 strides as a pocket passer, if his peak in the NFL as a pocket passer is as good as he is right now, he has the athletic ability to make things happen on the field. On this play, he's going to take the snap. It's going to be a fake jet sweep, play action, and there's really only 3 routes right here. We've got the check down right here. That's covered. This crossing route is triple covered, and then this deep crosser is bracketed, meaning if this guy goes to the left, this defensive back will take him, and if he breaks to the right, this guy will take him. So there's really not a great option here. But Richardson has the ability to just say, F it, I'm going to do this myself. And from midfield, Richardson goes 50 yards, makes a guy miss, and takes it all the way to the house. This is super similar to Justin Fields. And if you haven't seen my video on him, go check that out. I'll put it up right here. But it's super similar to the offense that the Bears ran with Fields, where they didn't make anything too mentally straining on him. They kind of just let him use his athletic ability to work and just cook. And it worked really well. The Bears finished with one of the most efficient rushing offenses in the league, and I don't think that would be any different with Anthony Richardson.
So that's kind of where I am with Richardson right now. Right now, he really reminds me a lot of Trey Lance as a prospect, and obviously he sat for a year with the Niners. I think that's a pretty good plan of attack for whoever drafts Richardson. As for the pick and the fit, I've seen a lot of mocks him going in the late first round, somewhere in the 12 to 15 range, and I've also seen him not even going in the first round at all. I can personally guarantee you that he is going to be picked in the top 5, and right now I'm kind of predicting he is one of the top 2 picks in this year's draft. The teams that I think make the most sense for him are Indianapolis and Houston. Indianapolis just hired Shane Steichen as their head coach, and Steichen obviously worked a lot with Jalen Hurts. If there's anyone that values mobility in a quarterback, it's him. And if you don't remember, Jalen Hurts fell all the way to the second round because he was really raw as a passer. Obviously, Steichen was able to help iron that out. Who's to say that he can't do that with Richardson? With Houston, I think the fit really makes sense because I don't think that they're going to be nearly as high on Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Stroud has Deshaun Watson's agent, and I would not be surprised if there's some kind of force out situation there. And in terms of Young, Houston really values size in their quarterbacks, and Young is someone that I think is going to be a pretty big draft faller because he just doesn't have that kind of size. Now, the next guy we're looking at is Jaxon Smith-Njigba, the Ohio State wide receiver. Let's look at him right now.
When I first heard of Jaxon Smith-Njigba, or JSN, he was putting up Wilt Chamberlain numbers like this on opposing defenses, despite the fact that he was in a receiver room filled with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Garrett Wilson and Olave were obviously the 2 best rookie receivers this year, and Harrison projects to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft. At one point, he was projected to be one of the first guys off the board in this year's draft, but he had some injury issues going into this season, and this was his entire stat line on the year. And at this point, his draft stock is kind of hovering around the mid-20s. And even when he was on the field, he was such a non-factor because he was just not running at all because he was hurt. Like, even right here, he is visibly limping right here. So even though he played a couple games, it was effectively like he was out for the entire season. But even before the injury, JSN was not really someone who displayed an elite athletic profile at any point in his career. But honestly, I don't care at all. He reminds me a lot of Travis Kelce in that even though he's not the most athletic guy, Kelce is so dominant at his position because he's just so technical and intelligent at every single thing he does. And JSN is exactly that way. You're going to see on this play, he's going to do a little split release, which means his legs are going to kind of kick out and even his base out. And then he's going to shimmy his shoulders to the left and release to the inside. And that's going to get number 5 off of his hip a little bit and then get him just behind him. So JSN has the leverage to sell vertically and then stop on a dime and shake him off. That's exactly what he does. Brings his pad level a little bit lower. He's not indicating at all by bringing him up high and then down. No, he stops on a dime, quickly shuffles, and makes the catch. But if that wasn't pretty enough, he also has the spatial awareness to kind of pirouette off of that. And then at this point right here, a lot of guys are going to try and split the gap between these 2 defenders and go for maybe another 5 yards. But JSN has the bend and the agility to kind of cut around it and then turn this into a huge play. And then here's where you see the lack of athletic profile come in because most guys have the home run speed to take a play like this to the house. But my argument to that would be most guys, the play ends right here. And they don't have the technical ability to have that fluid a release or sell vertically that well and then stop on a dime. JSN might not be the biggest, strongest, fastest guy in this class, but I promise you, he is by far the most refined. His 2021 film is 10 times better than his 2022 film because he's not injured and can actually move his leg without wincing in pain every single time. On this play, he's just going to catch a simple drag route. Catches it right there, and at this point, the play's basically over, except for that JSN is an actual genius with the ball in his hands. He's going to stop for just a second, and then when this defender starts to push his momentum forward to tackle him, he's going to reverse field ever so slightly and then beat him around the edge, and by that point, he can pick up a first down. JSN is every quarterback's dream because he's just so friendly to how they want to get him the ball. Indiana's showing the most obvious cover 2 shell ever, and JSN knows this. He's running a vertical concept, so he's going to attack the outside hip on this seam defender right here. He's going to kind of start to bend towards the sideline, and then right when he crosses his body, he comes right back in towards this logo right here because there's a gap between these 2 safeties and this middle linebacker right here. And Stroud makes an incredible throw into triple coverage right there to JSN. But none of this doesn't happen if JSN is not able to kind of read this defense and adjust his route accordingly. This is another good example of it. We have a 1-high safety shell right here. This tight end motioning across the field. And given that no defenders followed him across that motion, that's a good indicator that it's zone. 9 times out of 10 when you see zone in a 1-high concept, that's cover 3. And by the time they snap the ball, that's exactly what it is. So JSN is kind of going to attack under these second-level defenders and then sort of settle in the area between the second and third level, sort of acting before the defense can react. And Stroud finds him, but just misses him, and he almost comes down with this spectacular circus catch, but just misses the one-hander. Another way that he's super quarterback friendly is that he adjusts really well to the scramble drill. He's lined up in the slot, just running a basic crossing route, and pretty much everything is covered by this zone. And you're going to watch Stroud. He doesn't really have any great options to throw to here, so he's just going to step up in the pocket, kind of starts taking off, and you can see right as he starts running, JSN's going to break off his route and just find open space, and it gives Stroud an easy target to throw to pick up the first down.
If you couldn't tell already, I am really, really high on JSN. Obviously, the athletic profile is not incredible, but I think that there's very few scenarios in which he does not become, at minimum, a top 20 or a top 15 receiver in the league, just because he's so smart, he's so technical, he can create separation. And I think a lot of people think that he's really not going to be that dynamic of a threat with the ball in his hands, but similar to Travis Kelce, he's a really smart runner once the ball is in his hands, and I think he's going to be a really good threat. As for the team and fit, I think he should go to the NFC North to either Green Bay or Chicago. Chicago is likely to trade back from the number 1 spot in my opinion, and depending where he falls, I think he would mesh really well with Justin Fields. GM Ryan Poles said that Fields needs to take a step as a pocket passer, but it was kind of hard to do last year given the receivers that he had. It was a lot of just tall, inexperienced, deep threats. He needs someone that can kind of cover those short and intermediate levels of the field a little bit better, and someone that can help him adjust to the scramble drill. JSN is the guy to do that in this class. And for Green Bay, if they keep Aaron Rodgers, he had a lot of chemistry issues with the receivers this year because they don't really mesh very well with him. The chemistry is not quite there, and they're not really the smartest receivers around. JSN is someone that I think will mesh immediately with Rodgers and could be a 12 to 1,300 yard receiver if he goes to Green Bay. Now, the final guy that I'm talking about, I didn't collect nearly as much film on him because I didn't think I really needed to, or else it'd feel a little bit redundant. But Nolan Smith out of Georgia is someone that I really like and someone I want to take a dive into. So let's go.
A quick Google search will tell you that Nolan Smith is 6'3", 235 pounds, and to anyone who's really only using numbers to make their draft analysis, Smith is automatically going to be lower on their board because you can't really be a 3-down rusher at that size. When you're only 235 pounds, you're not really an effective piece at stopping the run, and a lot of people don't want to use an early first-rounder on a guy like that. But I'm not really worried about that 235 measurement for a couple reasons. The first being is that I think by the time the combine rolls around, he'll test in between the 240 and the 250 range, and I think that'll be a more attractive number to teams. But the second reason is that what Smith doesn't have in his size, he makes up for in his quickness, his creativity, and his absolutely perfect technique. On this play, Georgia's only rushing 3 against 7 different blockers, meaning that Smith is bound to draw a double team, and that's exactly what he does here. Number 18 is looking for a chip block right here on Smith, but you're going to see him take that big leap towards the inside, and 18 whiffs his block entirely. But the other thing that jump does is when you look at 62's feet, they're running to the outside the entire time from the snap, but once he takes a step in, he plants his base on that right foot, and he's going to move further towards the inside, and that right there gives Smith the leverage to win around the offensive tackle's outside shoulder. After he plants, takes that big jump to the inside, he's going to attack the outside shoulder and sort of swim over the top of him, and then once he gets that handover, he's going to slap the arm of the offensive lineman, get it off his chest, and at that point, he's free to get a pressure, gets a hit on the quarterback, and forces an incompletion. If you hear someone say that Nolan Smith is too small and won't be an effective piece in the running game, then you can automatically tell that they are not watching their film, because I think his run defense is probably his biggest strength. You're going to see on this play right here, this tackle is going to pull on the outside, and this tight end is coming in to block Smith. Smith recognizes this immediately and ducks that outside shoulder so low to the point where the tight end has no leverage, just slips right off him, and Smith is there to single-handedly shut down the run. See it again right here. Smith lined up on this left edge, going to be a running play, and right off the bat, he's going to take that massive leap to the inside, dip the outside shoulder, and the offensive lineman just has zero leverage on him, slips right through, makes a tackle in the backfield. This very next play, he shows that even though he's small, he's really good at finding leverage, and his contact balance is good enough that he can kind of get into position to move bodies a little bit. Going to be another run play, and again, jumps to that inside, but instead of ducking under the offensive lineman, he's going to put his shoulder into him, move him back, and at that point creates the leverage, stops the run. His hand usage truly is some of the best that I've ever seen out of a prospect. You're going to see he's matching up against this tackle, and the tackle's going to try to get the arms out to kind of hit him in the shoulders and move him back. Smith basically catches his arms and just tosses them aside, brings it right past the offensive tackle's outside shoulder. Quick pressure on the quarterback. For someone as small as Nolan Smith, this sure is a pretty good distance that he pushes this offensive lineman back straight into the QB. You don't really see guys this small have a bull rush like that, but makes contact with 55 right around there and just has him backpedaling the whole way. Quarterback was actually really lucky to get a completion off.
I'm sorry to all you Georgia fans out there who wanted me to do a little bit more on Smith. There weren't really any other thoughts that I had, and I could have thrown some other clips in there, but I felt it would have just been redundant. The main takeaway is that he's going to be written off a lot because he's really small, but I think he'll have absolutely no trouble overcoming that in the NFL. For his pick, I think a match made in heaven is pick number 10 to the Philadelphia Eagles. You look at their upcoming free agents, and they're basically losing the entirety of their interior defensive line. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, all of those guys are gone, and even if they re-sign them, they're getting pretty old at this point. They need to add a little bit of youth to that defensive line. And you look at the Eagles' weakness on defense this year, it was their run defense. Obviously, they had Jordan Davis to kind of plug up the A gaps in the middle, but the more and more you get further out to those B and those C gaps, they weren't nearly as effective. I think Nolan Smith can kind of play on the outside, and he's so smart, he's so technically sound. I think he'll have no trouble plugging the run over there in Philadelphia. So that is everything I have for you today. I will probably end up making another Draft Crushes video just because there's so many guys I have not watched. I haven't watched a single offensive lineman or cornerback or a bunch of other different position groups. And as I get further along in my scouting process, I'll obviously have some more Draft Crushes that I think should be risers in this year's draft. But if you liked the video, make sure you leave a like, hit the subscribe, click the bell, do all of that, and I will see you guys next time.